Hey everyone, welcome to the Middle School Visual Arts PLC group. My name is Alicia Montgomery and I'm the moderator for this group. I'm so glad that you joined this community. It was created with you in mind. Our goal is to collaborate and support each other as we navigate the craziness of teaching middle school visual arts. Whether you're the only one in your system or one of many, we know that you will find things to hear to help you. In order to make this as beneficial as possible for everyone, be sure to set up your notifications and check back often to see post discussions and support that will be showcased. Please engage in our discussions and offer up any support or questions that you may have. Also, share this platform with your friends and colleagues. In this episode, I'm going to talk with you about tips for getting the new year started. I'm going to cover some of the ways I get my classroom set up for the new year by managing materials, rules, best practices, remembering names, all of those basic things that you need to get started. Now, in my situation, we do this every 9 weeks. So for some of you, you may be ready to getting started a new quarter, or you may be starting a new year completely. So one of the things that I do is I make sure that I label all of my cabinets. I use the little chalkboard labels for a lot of my materials, so that way if I need to move things around, it's really quick and easy for me to change those out. I just get the roll of chalkboard stuff and I just cut it to the size that I need, and then I use the chalk markers and just write on them, and they just wipe off with a wet paper towel. But they last a pretty long time. The one thing that I have found with them is they do fade a little bit over time with our lights. So I have to go back over them sometimes. But I also try to put pictures of what they could create with that material on the cabinets as well. So like you'll see a couple of watercolor paintings that my students have done here. The photograph on the right shows the cabinets where my students store their materials. So sketchbooks, boxes of crayons and color pencils, things that are specific to those groups go in each class. So we have an odd and even day schedule. So this is like my second period even day and third period even day cabinets. All right, the next thing I do is I have a crate that looks like this one that has all of my construction paper and handouts in them, things that they can do if they finish early. And I have them labeled on the sides with the color, with the color that was supposed to be in that slot. Technology we use off and on in my classroom. This is my Chromebook cart. So in my Chromebook cart, I have all of my Chromebooks numbered. My cables, my plugs are also numbered, so that way the kids can very quickly find which plug goes with their Chromebook. I have a few laptops that we use as well, and those are assigned to individual students. And then we have some drawing tablets that are assigned. I have a set of 12 of those that I assign to certain students, so that way I can keep up with who's used which one every day. So if there's any damage or any problems, I know who had it last. So we can keep up with any issues that way. I have these numbers written on my attendance sheet, so that way if who is number 13, I can just really quickly go and look and see who had that last. Another thing that I use a lot is, and these are really nice because I can swap them out with materials as we need them. This is the way it usually looks at the beginning. So we have the sharpeners and just some glue sticks for gluing things in our sketchbooks. A little table duster. And then as we do different things, I will add other materials to those or change them out as we need them. So if we're doing a lot of cutting, then I'll put scissors on there. I'll take those back up. Just different materials that we'll use for the different projects. So they're really convenient and swap things in and out very quickly. I also have trays on their tables. There's lots of different ways that I use these. For sanitization purposes, I have a materials tray, which looks like this one. And then I have another tray that's the same color that's empty. And so anything that they use during class that day, they can put on the sanitized tray, and we spray those things or wipe them down at the end of each class to help cut down on transferring germs. And I swap these out based on what we're doing as well. So this is what it would look like if we were painting. I also have little caddies for our handouts and our resources. And I have them labeled 6th and 7th grades. I just have 6th and 7th graders. And so when my classes come in, if there's any handouts or instruction sheets that go along with the lesson that we're doing, I just put those in those bins and they stay on their tables. And that way it's very easy for them to just grab what they need, and I don't have to spend time switching out between class periods or grade levels what they need. I have found that these are a little bit top heavy, so I am going to go in and put some weights down in the bottom of them so that they'll stop tipping over every time we put stuff in them. So if you can get the long wide ones instead of the taller ones where your papers turn sideways, that would probably work better. Another thing that I know we all have trouble with is pencils. They go missing, used to go missing like crazy from my classroom. So what I've started doing is I made a little corner of my whiteboard, and I've just bought some little cheap dollar store magnets that have little clips on them. And what students will do is if they need to borrow a pencil, they will write their name in the box. They will take a pencil, and then at the end of class, when they bring the pencil back, they will just erase their name. And that way at the end of class, I can really quickly look and go, okay, I have them all, or hey, Johnny, will you please make sure you return your pencil before you leave? And so that really helps a lot, cut down on pencils that walk away. Another thing that I've found that gets a lot of damage are my erasers and oftentimes my rulers. So what I've started doing is I've started numbering them. And so the same Chromebook number that they use is also the number that they use to pick up rulers and erasers. And that way too, like you can see, these were halfway through the year when I took this photo. They've been a little abused. That's what happens when I leave and forget to lock them up. But I can just mark, oh, there's just half an eraser, or this eraser has a a hole in it already, or it's a weird shape. So that way I can see if students are abusing them otherwise. So the kids get the eraser or the ruler that they're assigned to, and then they bring them back at the end of class, and I check and make sure I have them all, check for any damage, and then we deal with any damage issues that way. That has really helped cut down on the amount of abuse that my materials take. Another thing that I found is really handy is little caddies like these. I actually bought these, but for a long time I just had a piece of cardboard that I poked holes in that we used to create individual holes. So then I could look really quickly, make sure I've got all the scissors back at the end of class, or X-Acto knives when we use those. I had the same kind of setup. You could also take a chunk of wood and just drill holes in it and use the same thing that way. Right, and then we have all the student stuff. How do you keep up with all of that? So one of the things I've done is I've gotten these little yellow boxes, and I have labeled them all with their group color and their class name. So like you'll see my little label at the bottom, like this is my first period class on odd days, and this is my red groups table or portfolio. So on the left, this box is big enough that it holds all of the group's sketchbooks, and it holds Ziploc bags that have all their crayons and color pencils in them. So it's very easy to assign those to a student. If they tear them up, then they know that they've got to use them next time. That also helps cut down on sharing materials with all the germs and things that we're trying to cut down during these crazy times. And then the next thing I have is on the right, you'll see one of their portfolios. I have purchased these, but I used to just take a piece of poster board, fold them in half, and I'd run them through the laminator and just cut the top open. And so those were really sturdy and would hold up really well as well. And they're labeled with their class and their group color as well. Another thing that I do to help keep up with papers is just a little turn-in area. So this is just one of the cardboard paper sorters, and I just made little tags with each class's name on it, and that's where they turn in their papers. If they're absent or if they're turning things in late, I just tell them go put it in the slot. Then I don't have to worry about, oh, where did I lay that on my desk? Or what did I do with that when they gave it to me last class? Okay, or when they handed it to me walking down the hallway. I just tell them go stick it in your class's slot. And so that really helps with organization as well too. And then I can pull things out, grade them, and put them back in there. And then that way when the next class comes in next time, I can just grab it and pass them back out. And I don't have piles of papers laying everywhere. Another thing that I set up at the very beginning is a little gallery wall. So this is my gallery wall. It has little clothespins on it that look like the one on the right, and I just hot glued some push pins to the back of them, and I take and clip their artwork up there really fast, and then I can just swap it out. So that way all the students can have their artwork exhibited, at least for a week. I usually swap this out weekly, or sometimes I'll have a student swap it out. And another big thing that I like to set up at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the quarter, is just an area for all my cleaning supplies. So I have some little cloths that I use just to wipe down the tables at the end of class every day for not doing things that are super messy. Right? I have them sort of color coded, but I have the hooks that they're hanging on color coded, so the kids will grab one, wipe their table off, and hang these back up. That way they dry, and it keeps us from using so many paper towels just for cleaning up small things. And then on the right, you'll see I have my labeled cabinets. So I have paintbrush cleaner, I have cleaning cloths. We also have some bottles of spray that the school refills for me. I just recycle bottles from like Mean Green or whatever I use at home. And we just, once I finish emptying the bottle, I bring it to school and we just use those. They hold up really well, and then we don't have to waste money buying spray bottles to clean the tables with. And we'll use those on days when we're doing messy things like clay or painting. All right, some of the best practices that I use to start off my year. I make sure that I teach rules and procedures daily for a couple of weeks with my classes. We have a do now that we do at the beginning of class every day. I make sure I have my classroom management plan set up, and I'll let my students know what it is, and that I have my cleanup procedures set up. And I'll talk to you more about those in another video. Right, another thing that I really try hard to do is to make sure that I remember my students' names. I teach about 240 students every 2 days, and so trying to remember their names is really hard, but I think it is so important to know your students' names and to be able to call them by names. It makes them feel good for starters, but it also helps with classroom management. Sometimes all you have to do is just call the student's name to get them to do what they're supposed to without really having to get on to them. I try to call their names when we line up at the end of class before they go out, and if I have to ask them again, I do, so I kind of remember those. And I'll start off with a seating chart that looks kind of like this one. This is the way my classroom is set up. And I go ahead and write their names in, and then while they're working, or if I just have a few minutes where they're not really asking me questions, I just kind of look at their names and look at where they're sitting and look at them and try to just take a few minutes every day to start remembering those names. I really just focus on first names. That's about all my brain can handle. And then we usually do some kind of little name project at the beginning, which they on the front of their sketchbooks, they just draw their name. We talk a little bit about elements and principles of art. But while they're working on that lets me go around and look at their names and with their location and their self, and look at their faces to help me learn their names too. Right? I make sure that at the end of class we have chores. Each student, based on where they sit, has a different chore. It takes them just a couple of minutes, but that way it keeps our room clean, keeps make sure that our materials are put away nice and neat. And so my seat 1 people, they're putting up the little sketchbook boxes with the crayons and colored pencils, those yellow boxes that you saw earlier. My seat 2 people wipe and sanitize the tables. My seat 3 people clean up any materials that are on the tables. Right, so like if there's little eraser cruddies or things like that, they'll wipe those up before my table cleaners clean them. My seat 4 people, they check underneath the tables for lost crayons, erasers, bits of paper, things like that, sweep if they need to. My seat 5 people put up the portfolios, and my seat 6 people are my materials handlers. So like if we're painting today, then they're going to be handling the paintbrushes, water buckets, paint, making sure those things get where they need to go. I tell my students to make sure they all know all of the chores, because if somebody is absent from their group, then I'm going to ask for volunteers to do that job. And most of the time I'll have a student volunteer to do that. If not, then I just kind of rotate who I choose to do those jobs. And then I also have some specialty chores. My specialty chores, I usually try to pick students that I find really like to clean or like to help. And I'll have one of those wipe down the sink every day at the end of class if we used it, to make sure there's not any paint or clay dust or things like that left in it. I pick out a counter straightener and wiper. So like if I have where the rulers are and the erasers are, I have them just straighten those up, make sure everything's there. Straighten up any handouts that are left. And then I have my numbered materials checker. So they check and make sure that all the Chromebooks are there, all the rulers are back, all the erasers are back, all the pencils are back. And that frees me up to watch students, make sure we're not having any discipline issues while we're cleaning up and moving around the room. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's helpful. Check back for our next professional learning topics, and then we'll talk more about kind of the beginning of the year. All right. Have a great evening.